The debate about whether or not to implement uniforms in public schools is an age-old debate that I believe is still very relevant today. The more the media broadcasts sexy images of men and women, and the more the standard of propriety falls, the greater the need for regulation in the educational environment, and that will continue to increase. I believe that schools that require students to wear uniforms are taking care of a lot of problems plaguing schools today, and that what they're doing is ultimately the best choice for their students. Dress codes just don't work. There are many stories in the media today about students being sent home from school and various other punishments they have to endure for clothes that they wore that administrators thought did not fit the school dress code. On April 27th of this year, just a few days ago, an article was posted on WGNTV.com. This article was about a 5-year-old girl that had to wear a t-shirt over and pants under her sundress because the school deemed the outfit to be inappropriate according to the school dress code. The little girl's father, Jeff Rauner, was very upset, stating that while the t-shirt was acceptable because the dress had spaghetti straps, the pants underneath were a little bit ridiculous because the dress came down to the girl's ankles. Also, this is her 5-year-old. I would agree with Mr. Rauner that this punishment was a little bit ridiculous. Many people speculate that the reason that school administrators are coming down so hard on kids wearing inappropriate clothes to school is because they want to protect the girls from wandering eyes of the boys, and they want to hold the boys accountable for where their thoughts are going. I agree that the temptation factor is one of the reasons that schools and administrators have become more strict about the policies. And I also agree with the argument that it's unfair for them to just single out women and not really care about the men. I will say that it's a little bit harder for men to be immodest than it is for women, but still I think that it's not fair that dress codes and everything is geared just directly towards women. The only way to solve this issue is to stop singling out women through dress codes and frustrating punishments and just implement school uniforms. By saying that girls should be able to wear what they want to wear and boys just need to learn to deal with it, we're asking young adults to operate at an intellectual level that they have not yet reached. Instead of saying that girls should be able to do what they want and boys need to learn to deal with it, I think we need to better regulate the situation while we still can. While dress codes have the right intentions, they are too subjective, and that quality is obviously causing a lot of problems, as you can see from the media today. School uniforms are really the only way to regulate students' clothing objectively. I wouldn't argue that school uniforms improve the education of students, but they are a factor in creating a better environment for that education to take place. In an article on greatschools.org by Marian Wild, she cites a study conducted by Virginia Draw. Virginia is an assistant professor at Youngstown State University. In her study, Draw noticed that schools with uniform policies had better attendance, better graduation, and better suspension rates. Giving students a uniform takes one item off their to-do list in the morning. They don't have to decide what they're wearing to school that day, and they don't have to decide what they're going to wear to school the next day or anything like that. Also, giving students a uniform helps those students that are less privileged, that cannot afford the clothes that the other students have, to be confident in what they're wearing and the fact that they look the same as everybody else. It creates that equality among students that is lacking today. Giving students a uniform can bring some of the bullying to a stop. While not all the bullying centers around what the clothes the students are wearing or whether they look funny, it will take a lot of emphasis off the appearance of students and what kind of financial situation they're dealing with at home. These factors alone are enough to bring up the attendance rates of students, bring up the graduation rates of students, and bring down the suspension rates. In an article in Time magazine by Belinda Luscombe, she talks about how she had to wear a school uniform and how she benefited from that experience. Luscombe's first point is that she agrees that school uniforms alleviate bullying and harassment. The first thing she says is that body type disappears. Usually uniforms are just kind of like there. They're not fashionable clothing. It just takes away the whole body type issue. 2, social class is harder to determine. When everyone's wearing the same thing, it's hard to notice who has more money than someone else. The third point is that Students can bond over their collective dislike of what they're being forced to wear. The second point Belinda made was that uniforms empower the school staff. There's no subjectivity with a uniform. A uniform is what it is, and it can be enforced as what it is. Also, it's harder for students to skip school or get into trouble because people know where they belong just by the clothes that they're wearing. The third point that Belinda makes is that school uniforms can fund education. Schools have a steady supply and demand for uniforms. When students graduate, they can donate their uniforms back to the school, and those uniforms can be resold to underprivileged families at a lower rate. Also, students don't wear uniforms outside of the times that they're absolutely required to, so students can show their individuality outside of school hours and on the weekends. The last point that Belinda made was that students learn the lessons that not everything is about them. While taking away student choice seems like a big issue to some people, and seems like taking away the individuality of students, they're actually learning a lesson that not everything in life is about them, and they don't always get what they want. This is a lesson in humility, obedience, and servitude, and it's incredibly lacking in our society today. My last point is really important, I think, because it's something that I think a lot of people don't really understand today. It's that uniforms don't have to be a drag. When people think about school uniforms, they think about plaid skirts, white shirts, sweater vests, khakis, navy sweaters, white shirts, the classic khaki pants. But that's not what uniforms have to be today. In fact, schools can make uniforms more fun by providing options. They can make different patterns and different styles, and they can offer students the option to buy multiples, and they can mix and match if they want to, but it would all be within the school uniform policy. Another way that they can make uniforms a little more fun is by asking for student assistance in the designing of their uniforms. Just because a school implements a policy of school uniforms doesn't mean they have to get rid of all student individuality in clothing. A fun way to make sure that students can express themselves still is by having fun weeks like Spirit Weeks, where on a certain day all the students will wear tie-dye, or on another day it'll be pajama day and everybody wears their pajamas. There will still need to be a dress code for these special days, but I think that having these things will teach students to not abuse the freedom they're given when they have it, and to make good decisions when they're given the option to make their own decisions. While implementing school uniforms may not have direct effects on the quality of the learning that students obtain, it does have a direct effect on the environment of the school where the students obtain that learning. So many issues like bullying and sexual harassment can be prevented through the use of uniforms. A dress code just isn't enough to cut it. Instead of creating all of this drama over school administrators making decisions about what is and isn't appropriate for students to wear to school, why don't we just streamline the process and take the subjectivity out of the judgment? School uniforms are the only way to do that.